Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Mosaic webinar, Introduction to MDF Doors. I'm Ken Roberts, and with me is Matt Wallace, and we're going to be guiding you through this webinar together. Matt, how are you doing today?
Hey everybody, doing great, Ken. How about yourself?
I am doing great as well. Thanks, Matt. All right, so here's what we're doing today. We're going to be getting into the basics of MDF doors, what they are, why they're popular, and how we can use them in Mosaic. From there, we'll kind of dig into the options and so show some examples so you can feel confident putting these into practice in your own production. Now, we want this webinar to be interactive, so as we go, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A area. So you should see a tab in Zoom that says Q&A. If you have any questions, just post them in there. And we'll pause a few times to cover as many questions as we can. With time permitting, we may not be able to answer all of your questions. All right, so let's dive in. So we have a little vanity drawn here, and we'll kind of use this room to view our doors as we go. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go to our settings tab, and we have our door and drawer tab here, and we can see the selections there. Right now, we're just using flat doors and drawers. So let's jump into our door library and we'll take a look at the functionality for MDF doors in there. So we're going to go to libraries. We're going to come down to doors. This is going to open up our door library. A lot of you may already be familiar with this, but we do have some options at the top. The first one is the library selection. So you can create separate door libraries, and you can do that by using these three buttons here. And we could add additional libraries and have different doors in different libraries. But I want you to keep in mind that we can only select one door library for each room. So if you break all of your different door styles and profiles into separate libraries, it can restrict the flexibility of your design. So you may want to put some thought into that and consider just having one, solid door library that you can use for all of your jobs. Below that, we have some tabs. First is the thumbnail tab. The thumbnail tab is just going to show us a thumbnail preview of every door style we have in this specific library. Next, we have the traditional tab. This is where we can design our 5-piece traditional doors. The miter tab is where we can design our 5-piece traditional doors with mitered joints. The slab tab is for flat doors and drawers. The routed tab is where we're going to design our 1-piece MDF doors. And the SketchUp tab is where we could import a SketchUp model if we wanted to represent a door with a SketchUp model, if it was something really intricate. So we're going to come back to the routed tab and let's add a new door. We'll come over to the right and we'll click Add. Now Mosaic's going to ask us, what name do we want to give this door? Now, personally, I like to name my doors with the style and rail widths and the pocket depth because I might have different styles with varying style and rail widths. And adding the pocket depth on the end is going to help us with our panel tool group selection. And we're going to get into panel tool groups here shortly. So my styles and rails on my shaker door are 2¼ inches. So I'm going to call this the 2¼ shaker door. And then in parenthesis, I'm just going to put quarter. And that's just going to tell me what the pocket depth on this specific shaker door is. Let's say okay. After we hit OK, we are given the routed door dialog setup. Now, the first thing we're going to want to look at is our style and rail widths. Right now, they're set as 2½ but remember, this is a 2¼ shaker door. So I want to change these to 2¼ inches. So I'll do that here. I'll just copy this and paste it into the rest of the margins. And as I do this, you're going to see the door reflect those changes. Now to see a preview of our door, we can come over to the 3D button here. And when we hit that, it's going to open up a preview of our door. Now, if we look at our current door design, we do have our 2¼ rails and styles, and Mosaic is sending a tool path around the edge, and that's where the panel tool groups come in. Again, we're going to get into that. The main thing we're looking at right now is this center panel. We need this to be carved out. We do not want this to remain the thickness of our door. So let's jump back to our door setup. As we can see, we can select different panel types for these doors. Right now, it's set as a 1-piece door. Since we want a pocketed shaker door, we're going to change this panel type to pocket. Now, after we change that to pocket, we have to tell Mosaic how deep this pocket is going to be. And for that, we can use our panel recess. Now, remember we said that this was a 1/4 inch pocket. So we'll throw that in there. And now let's take a 3D preview of our door. So you can see now Mosaic has removed that panel from our door because it knows we're going to send our pocketing tool through here to carve this out. So we have our basic door started. Now we can further customize this door the same way that we can customize cabinet faces and cabinet interiors. And we can do that with our splitting buttons. We have multi-split, horizontal split, and vertical split. So let's say I wanted a center style on this door. I could vertically split this. And as you can see, Mosaic is going to give us a 2-pocket door. We can also multi-split. So if I grab this side and we use the multi-split button, we could split horizontally in 3 equal sections. And that's going to give us a 4-pocket door. You can lay out these doors to match your desired style. So I'm going to undo that. So we're just back to a regular shaker door. Now over here on the right, we have some door options. So let's go through these. Number 1 is buyout door. If we turn buyout door on, this tells Mosaic that we do not want these doors sent to our cut list. We are having another manufacturer produce these doors for us, so we're only going to need the overall sizes. Next is the oversize function, and this would allow you to oversize these doors if you wanted to square cut them on the saw afterwards. Then we have bore for hinges, bore for pulls, and bore for locks. Enabling this will tell Mosaic that you do want those operations to be machined during your CNC production. Now, keep in mind, if you do turn bore hinges on, that is going to force flip operations because we have this pocket on the front that we need our machine to carve out, and we're also going to need our hinge cups machined on the back. So just, keep that in mind. If you do bore hinges, be prepared for flip operations. Below that, we have applied beading. If we turn on applied beading and we take a look at our door, we can see that Mosaic is adding these beaded fluted tool paths. Now we do have some settings for those, and we can head up to the settings button and we'll head to the beading tab. And this is where we can set up that bead. First, we have the tool. So what tool do we want to run those beaded tool paths? Up here, we have the bead type. Is it a single bead or a double bead? And do we want to show high detail beading? So if you're creating a beaded door with very tight beads, it may slow down your system a little bit. So you may want to consider turning off the high detail beading to speed up the display. Below that, we have our spacing. So the width of the bead if we're using double bead, the space between the beads, and the depth of the bead cut. And then we also have bead stop distance. Bead stop distance is going to stop that beading tool shy so it doesn't collide with your rail. We'll exit out of here and we'll turn beading off. Now we have apply banding. So because this is an MDF door, we're probably not going to edge band this. This is going to be a painted component. Now, if you're doing flat doors and drawers out of melamine, you may want to turn the banding off, but for this type of door, we're going to keep that off. Next, we have applied molding. If we turn applied molding on and we take a look at our door, we can see that Mosaic has added a separate molding component on top of our frame. Now, this does not change the machining of your doors. This is simply representing a separate molding that you would cut and apply to your doors. It's just a way to represent that exact design to your clients. Below that, we have horizontal grain. Because this is an MDF door, MDF doesn't have a grain direction. But if you were using a door with grain, you would just switch it to horizontal grain there instead of the default vertical grain. Below that, you have the SKP model for display, and that's essentially that we could represent this door with a SketchUp model if we desired. Below that, we have our pricing and labor options. Now that we have our door done, we need to create a matching drawer front of this. So let's come over and we'll hit the copy button. Now I'll delete the word copy off the end, and I'm going to change the word door to drawer. We'll say okay. Now to tell Mosaic that this is going to be a drawer front and not a door, we're going to head up to the top and enable the drawer front checkbox. Now Mosaic knows that that's a drawer front. Now, I also use a reduced rail drawer. So if this drawer front goes below 7 inches, I use a different style. I use 1.75" top and bottom rails, and that gives me a little more room for my handles and hardware. So let's create another copy. Again, I'm just going to delete the word copy off the end, and I'm going to add RR to represent our reduced rail version. I'll come up and I'll change the top and bottom margins to our 1.75", and we can see those changes take effect in the preview. So now I have two drawer fronts. I have a regular drawer front and a reduced rail drawer front. Let's head back to our regular drawer front. We're going to see at the bottom that we have minimum and max widths and minimum and max heights. I want to take advantage of this feature. I want Mosaic to automatically switch this drawer style when it goes below 7 inches to my reduced rail version. So I'm going to put the minimum height of this drawer front to 7, and I'm going to put the replacement as our reduced rail. So now Mosaic knows if this specific drawer front style goes below 7 inches, it's automatically going to be switched to our reduced rail version. Now that we have our doors and drawer fronts complete, let's say okay, and we'll head into our job settings and we'll apply the doors. Now we're going to come up to the door style selector here. We're going to hit that button. This is going to give us access to our door library where we can select our door. There's our 2.25" shaker door with our 1/4 inch deep pocket. Let's say okay. And we're going to get this pop up. So this is the router door options. So we're going to tell Mosaic how we want this to be machined. First is our outside edge. We can just use our cutout tool. And essentially what that's going to do is the cutout tool that is the default in your tool set, Mosaic's just going to use that tool. Now you can select a different tool if you'd like, or an edge tool group. And we're going to get into edge tool groups in a couple of minutes here. So for this style of door, I just want to use the cutout tool. Now my routed door tools, also known as the panel tool groups, we'll select that. And I want to make sure that I select the shaker door 1/4 inch pocket. I want to make sure that this depth matches the pocket depth I have in my door. And we will jump into the panel tool groups and show you how these work and how to draw your own. So we'll select our shaker door 1/4 pocket and we'll say okay. And for our pocketing tool, again, we're just going to tell Mosaic use pocket tool. And essentially that's going to tell Mosaic, look in our tool set, find the tool that's marked as pocket tool and just use that. Let's say okay, and we can see in our room preview, we do have a shaker door on the base now. Let's do the walls next. Again, we're going to select our door style. We're going to grab our routed door tools, make sure we select the correct one. We're using the pocket tool and we're using cutout. We'll do the same for our drawers. Now with our drawers, I'm not going to select this reduced rail version. I'm just going to select the regular drawer because Mosaic's going to decide when I need to switch to that. So again, same thing. We're going to select that panel tool group, use pocket tool, use cutout tool. Okay. We'll do the same for our mid drawers. And you can see on the preview there on the left that Mosaic did decide to use our reduced rail version of this drawer on the top drawers. All right. So we can see that we have our shaker door. Let's jump into our room and we'll just take a quick look at what this looks like. So we can see that this is just a square pocket shaker. Now let's say we didn't want square edges. I wanted a 60-degree bevel on the inside of my panel to make cleaning a little easier for my clients. Now for that, I would have to create a new panel door tool group. So let's hop into the optimizer. Now in the optimizer, we're going to head to libraries and we're going to scroll down to our CNC tooling. When we open our CNC tooling, you're going to notice two tabs at the top. Panel tool groups, and that's where that shaker door 1/4 inch pocket is coming from. And then we have edge tool groups, and we will touch on this as well. So with our shaker door 1/4 inch pocket, you can see we're using two tools. We have a 1/2 inch straight flute tool, and we have an 1/8 inch down shear tool. Now with the panel tool groups, you're going to notice that you have a green line coming down the middle of this display dialog. This signifies the edge of our frame and the edge of our pocket. So think of it like on the left here is your rail or style, and on this side is the pocket. So because we have our tools on this side of the line, it's going to chase the inside of our frame. So it's going to leave our styles and rails at 2 1/4, And because this is matching that 1/4 inch depth, it's going to be the same depth of the pocket. Essentially, the purpose of this is because we're using an 1 3/4 pocket tool, it's going to leave some pretty considerable radiuses in the corner that we want to get rid of. So we're sending a more robust tool around that inside first to take care of most of that radius, and then we're sending our 1/8 down shear to tighten that inside radius to a 1/16 radius. Now you'll notice you have on edge and on center. Now to show you how that works, I'm going to add a new group and I'll just call this example. So right now I have this set on edge. Now if I bring in a tool, and to bring a tool in, you're simply going to click and hold, drag it over, and release your mouse button. You can also select the tool and hit the add button there. So now I have a tool in this tool set. I can drag this around and manually position it where I want it to sit, or I can dial it in with coordinates. So because we're on edge, if I set my offset to 0, it's on the left side of that line, but I need it on the right side. So I will use an offset that matches the diameter of that tool. So I'll say 1/2 inch. And you can see that's switched to the right side of the line there where I want it. Now, if I did on center and I switch this offset back to 0, you can see that tool is just going to be centered on our stile and rail line. So to get that on the right side, we would just offset this by 1/2 of the diameter. Now, it's completely up to you whether you prefer to use on edge or on center, whichever you're more comfortable with and helps you get those dialed in. So let's go back to our shaker door 1/4 inch pocket, and we want to create this same tool paths, except we just want an additional operation. We want to bevel this on a 60-degree angle. So I'm going to copy this group and we'll call it the 60-degree shaker door tool, and I'll make sure I delete the word copy on the end. And let me switch that symbol to this side. Now we'll say okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my tool list. I'm going to scroll down and find my 60-degree sharp corner. Again, I'm just going to drag that and drop it into my panel tool group. Now I know that I need this to be a 1/4 inch deep. I want it to match my pocket depth. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to set that to a 1/4. Now I want this centered on my stile and rail line because I only want 1/2 of that bevel. So because I'm using on center, very easy for me to come and grab that offset and change it to 0. Now you can see we've created a new shape. We have that bevel, and then we have our pocket. Now the order of operations is important. Mosaic is going to run these tools in the order they're sitting here. So if you set your 1/8 down shear as the first tool, you're probably going to break your tool. That tool's not robust enough to handle that amount of material. So we're going to put our most robust tool up top. So our 1/2 inch straight flute, that's going to take care of most of that radius. Then we're going to chase that with our 1/8. Since we removed most of the material, that 1/8 won't have too much work. And then we'll bring in our 60-degree sharp corner tool. Now we have some options over here. Cut through is simply going to tell Mosaic we want this tool to go all the way through the material. And you can see when I enable that, Mosaic thinks I want to put that all the way through the material. Sharp corners. So this is going to apply to your sharp corner bevel tools. Now, if we don't use sharp corner, Mosaic is not going to ramp this tool up and down in the corners and create those true sharp corners. It's simply going to hold that tool depth, and then we will get radiuses at the top there that match the radius at that height of the tool. So for this case, we're going to want to make sure we enable the sharp corner tools. Then you have ramping. This tells Mosaic, do you want these tools to ramp into these machining operations or not? And then flip side is just a way, if we were doing two-sided machining, that we can flip that tool to the other side. So now that we have our new tool group done, let's say okay, and we'll jump back over to Mosaic. We'll go back to our job settings, and in our routed door tool groups, we're going to select that, and we can see we have our new 60-degree shaker door. Let's select that, and we'll switch these over for all of our styles. We have our top drawer, mid drawer, and our bottom drawer. Let's jump into a room and take a look at those changes. We zoom in, it's still that same style of MDF door. It's just that we've beveled those edges. So with those panel tool groups, we can bring in additional machining to create those profiles we want by stacking tools. Now that we've done a basic shaker and then a bevel shaker, maybe we want to get into something more intricate, maybe shape tools. Maybe this isn't a simple bevel tool or a end mill. Maybe we want to run some beads. So Matt's going to jump in and show you how to draw custom tools and how to apply those to your panel tool groups.
Thanks, Ken. I'll just also remind everybody that the Q&A is open. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there and we can try and answer them live or write a response back to you guys. Okay, so let's add a new tool to our tool set. We're going to go into the optimizer. I've looked up a tool fairly common. It's just a roundover. We have an 1/8 inch roundover here. This tool, you can find these specs on most tooling manufacturers' websites. I will mention that we do have a good selection of tooling already preloaded in Mosaic. So, definitely have a look in here first before you go drawing your own tools. We're also trying to update our import updated data with any new common, tools that are coming up. If we have requests for tools, we'll try to add them there. So have a look in there as well before you spend the time. All right. So we have this roundover tool. I can see that I have my radius here at an 1/8 inch. The diameter is 1/4. My cut depth is an 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So in order to draw this tool, we have to create a CNC door tool. Now I can go ahead and just add a new tool. If I do that, it's going to drop it down right down to the very bottom of this list, which I don't really care to do today. So I'm actually going to copy this quarter compression. So we're just going to copy this tool and I'll call this 1/8 inch roundover. Now with this tool, in my tool list, we want to change the diameter. If it was something different, this is a 1/4 inch tool. My speeds and feeds and plunge rates, you're going to find these from your tooling manufacturer. They usually come with a chip load, so you're able to calculate those speeds and feeds. The important thing here, I want to uncheck this from being a cutout tool, and we're going to create this as a CNC door tool. With that, I now have an option to click on the tool shape. And here we have now our tool shape window. So this is just a simple, just like your shape parts editor or any of the other editing screens in Mosaic. This works off coordinates and points. You can also add radiuses and bulges to any of your lines. So we have a basic shape here of our tool. You can see our points here, my X and my Y, right? So X is going to be our left and right, so positive and negative values. Our Y is going to be our positive, negative values for going up and down with our points. So starting with my first point, we're only drawing half the diameter of this tool. So we're going to look at the D1. That's going to be our first point. So I can see it's at 0.02. So I'm going to set this value to 0.01. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see this a little bit clearer. I'm going to select the line and add a second point. This X is going to be also 0.01. But my cut length on this was that B1 value, which is an 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to add another point. Now, you can also just drag these down. They will align square with other nodes. In Mosaic, so you don't always have to enter in the values here, but you can see here it's gone 1/8 by 1/8, which would make sense for half of our diameter and then also our cut length. Now the radius of this tool, we see my R is going to be 1/8. So I'm going to select that node and change the radius to 1/8. So there's our tool. I can look at this in 3D. It gives me an image of what that tool shape is. Important to note that the more accurate you draw these geometries, the easier it is to create the panel tool groups. A little less trial and error at your machine if you're able to get a really clean drawing of the shape of the tool. All right. Now that we have that tool, let's go into the panel tool groups and we'll just add a group. And I'll call this bead shaker door, 1/4 inch pocket. So I'm going to add my tools starting with the 1/2 inch straight flute. I'm going to work on center. The depth of this is going to be 1/4 inch, and my offset is going to be 1/4 inch. So getting that on the inside of that tool line. Add our down shear. Same depth. And my offset on this one is going to be a 1/16. We'll add that round over tool. Now this tool, our depth's going to be a little bit different on this one. We're going to be going 1/8 of an inch. If you remember, my cut length on this tool was 1/8. My offset is set to 0. If we zoom in, you'll see that if we leave it at 0 right now, we're going to end up with a little bit of a ledge on the inside of this profile. So we need to offset this by half the diameter of that tip, which was 0.02. So we're going to go 0.01. That's going to get us now flush on the inside of that tool path. Let's have a look at that door now. So we're just going to exit out of the optimizer and I'm going to change the tool group. So just doing this for all of my doors, my drawers. And we'll have a look at the drawings again. So now we can see that we have a radius on the inside of that door. Now, I want to show you how simple it is to take this radius and turn it into a full bead, and also maybe an outside profile to match the inside. We're going to go back into the optimizer, go back into libraries, CNC tooling, panel tool groups, and I'm just going to grab that beaded shaker, and we're going to add another 1/8 inch round over. The depth on this one is going to be an 1/8 inch. The offset, if I do a negative value on this, it's going to put me on the outside of that tool path line. But if you remember, again, we had to offset this tool enough to make sure that we're staying on the inside of that tool path. So same with this, you can see we have a bit of a gap here. So we'd end up with actually with a bit of a flat spot right here if we were to leave it like this. So we're going to change this offset to minus 0.24 just to make up for that 0.01. So now we're going to go to the edge tool groups and we're going to add an edge tool group. Now, this is going to look a little bit different from the panel tool groups. This is looking from the outside edge of the door. So you can see, obviously, this is the end of your door, the top of your door. So we're going to add the round over. Again, I'm going to work on center. The depth of this is going to be 1/8 of an inch. And I need to adjust my offset because, again, we're going to have that little ledge right there. So our offset's going to be minus 0.01. I'm going to add one more tool. Depth of this one will be 1/8 of an inch. And the offset on this will be 0.24 to match my interior offset. All right. So if we go back into Mosaic, I just modified it, that beaded shaker door so we can see that it's added the bead right to the interior. But we're going to choose the outside edge now. So by default, you're going to be using your cutout tool. You do have the option here to change the cutout tool if you wanted to run a different tool around the outside perimeter. But you can also add a edge tool group. So we're going to add that outside bead. I'm going to do that for all doors. Actually, we don't have any wall elements job. It's good to stay consistent. My top drawer, mid drawer, and my bottom drawer. All right, so let's have a look at the products. I go into 3D here, and now you can see that we have a nice double beaded shaker door. Now, for you guys that are doing raised panel doors, quite easy to create those. let's go back into libraries door, CNC tools. And we're going to go to the panel tool group. Before I continue on, is there any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple questions from Christy. Christy asks, we buy out all of our doors from vendors like Northern Contours, Brushy Creek, JB Cutting, etc. How do I display those shapes in Mosaic?
So yeah, you'd want to obviously get the shapes. You could make basically faux tools in the optimizer to create different panel profile tool groups. There's a few ways, you could manage this, but I think I would probably, yeah, you'd want to name the panel tool groups basically to match whatever the different names are from those vendors in here, so that you'd be able to select those, and then it would change the profiles and show that door.
Awesome. And then Chris has a question. Can you create different doors instead of changing the tool groups? Now, with that, you may want to consider, because we want to maintain that flexibility where we have a 2¼ shaker door with a 1/4-inch pocket. Now, we could use this door to, apply multiple profiles and panel tool groups or edge tool groups onto that same door style. Now, if you did want to save these, what I would recommend is to save them as templates. So we may have just if you're not familiar with templates saves the collection of all of the settings in your room settings. So if you set these all to your bead shaker door, you may want to save a template bead shaker door, and that way you'd be able to switch to that template and all of your settings are going to populate. And then you may want to do one with a 60° and etc. That's going to keep your door library compressed and prevent overexpanding that library.
That's great. All right, so back to the raised panel doors. If we head back into the optimizer, go into libraries, CNC tooling, head over to panel tool groups. I'm going to copy the 60 shaker door. And I'm just going to call this a 60° raised. I'm going to take out the pocket and the copy. And I'm going to grab a panel tool. Now, this is where it's great. If you've drawn the tools, gotten a pretty accurate drawing of the tool, this gives you the ability to move this around. You can see where it's going to be interfering with different tools in your tool set. The depth of this one, obviously, we're going to keep it at a 1/4 inch to keep it the same. But I can now zoom in and I can see where it may or may not make contact. So I might pull this away. You can do this by just physically grabbing the tool, or you could add values here. So here I can see, we're just still a little bit, we got that 1/2 inch straight flute just interfering slightly. So I might just bump this over just slightly. Make sure that depth is set to 1/4. Still there. Okay, so now that I have that door, I'm gonna hit OK. And we're gonna go back into libraries, doors, routed doors, and I'm just gonna copy this shaker door. I call this 2¼ raised. And I'm just going to change the panel type to be a one piece. The panel recess, I would just set that to 0. This is not going to come into effect now with this door. All we're doing is we're running a tool path now around the door that your tool group can follow. There's no pocketing included. So I hit OK. And if we grab the base doors here, change these out for the raised panel door, set the outside edge to the cut tool, and the routed door set to the raised door. You can now see that those center doors have a nice raised panel on them with that 60° V groove. All right, so let's take these doors to the optimizer. So I'm going to go to cut list, optimize, and we're just going to select our doors. That's going to open on my other screen, so I'm just going to drag that over. Now, optimize. We're going to optimize this, just our 3/4 MDF. Important to note, this job, we have the raise panel and the shaker, so I want to make sure that I have all the correct tools in my tool set. I don't have that cove in there right now, so I'm just going to add that. Libraries, CNC tooling, ATC tool set, and I'm going to grab the, I believe it was this one here. So we're going to insert that tool. Now when I generate G-code, you know what? There's one more I got to put in there. Our beaded tool. Almost forgot. Let's grab that round over. Everything else is in there. Let's generate G-code, calculate. So now we can see our pocket. There's our straight flute doing its first pass around those doors. The 1/8 inch doing its second pass. The 60-degree sharp corner. There's our 1/8 round over. The vortex panel cutter, panel tool, and then our compression doing our outline cut. You can control the pocket tool. We've added that ability in library CNC tooling. If you go to the panel, the pocket tool that you're using, if you have it selected as a pocket and click on pocket options, you'll find some pocket strategies here. By default, it's going to be using the offset. We've had a lot of customers recommend the raster. It seems to be the fastest way to pocket out the panel, and it's leaving the cleanest finish. If your machine's able to do it, you can also radius the corners. This sometimes helps with any kind of witness marks that might be left when it's changing the direction. So definitely, play around with this, see what works good for you. But they just want to know it's there. All right. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, we don't have any questions posted right now. So just a reminder, if anybody has any questions or needs any clarification on anything we've gone over in this webinar, feel free to post those questions. And just a heads up, this is the introductory to MDF doors. We will be doing more advanced versions of these webinars as well. We're going to show you how to do glass doors and more of those advanced functions and designs. So stay tuned for those. So we have a question from Chris. What is preference to prime MDF doors? So not a ton of advice on that. Most people are going to use a lacquer-based MDF and do like a 2-coat. You're going to scuff those coats beforehand, and then you can put your top coat on that. So, I'm not a finishing expert, so probably not a question geared towards us, but it's usually going to be a lacquer primer on there. We have a question from Derek, and that's going to be, what type of V-bit is recommended for inside bevel shaker for the cleanest result? Insert versus solid carbide, 2 to 3 flutes?
I always used a 2-flute insert. They're a great tool, easy to replace the blades. They're consistent. My old shop, we ran thousands of MDF doors with insert tools and had a great experience with those. If you're looking at pocketing tools, I would recommend going to like a diamond finish over an insert, but the inserts work great as well if you're not doing high volume doors. But if you're doing a ton of doors every year, it's going to pay for itself using those diamond coated bits.
All right, and then Amin has a question. I never run flip operations since I'm using Mosaic for 4 years. Are you guys doing a webinar on that? So in the future MDF door webinars, we will get into the flip machining, and we will touch on that. Today, we're just more focusing on the basics, more geared towards people that aren't doing MDF doors yet, or maybe curious about them and how they can implement them into their workflow. And then we have a question from Alina. Can you show how to do the beaded panel door and how to configure the beads?
Yeah, I can grab that one. So we can actually show this. It's in the door settings. So when you go into your routed doors, you're looking at your shaker door, you have the option here to apply beading. So, sorry, that's bedding, apply beading. These settings are all in the settings tab. And here you have some different options. So let's say, we wanted to do a V groove. That's a pretty common one with some of the beading. So I'm going to grab the 60, and you can set up a single or double. So if I wanted to do a double, I have options here to do the width of the bead, the space between the beads, and then the depth of cut. So let's just make some changes to the space between the beads, 3/4 with the bead. The stop distance, this is a nice one. If you're running a larger tool and you needed to stop before the edge of the panel, you can create stop points. So I'll add a 1/4 inch here just to kind of show you what this is going to do. So if we look at this door now, and if we go up, there you go. So you can see that that V groove has done a double. The spacing between is a 1/4 inch. Spacing between is a 1/4 inch. The spacing between here is 3/4, and then we've gone a 1/4 inch stop before it hits the panel of the door. In this case, I would probably run that 60 on the outside, so you'd be able to run this tool almost right to the very edge of that profile. But if you had any issues with it nicking the inside profile there, you could put a small value just to keep it a hair back from the edge of that profile of the door.
All right. And then we have James looking forward to the presentation on multi-print. I'm always wanting a better commercial application. This is impressive. Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for joining the webinar today, James, and stay tuned to the webinar schedule. We will be doing multi-print as well, so stay tuned to that.
Yeah, thanks, James, for joining.
All right, so it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So if anybody does have any questions, now would be your last chance to get those posted.
And just a reminder, we will be posting this to the the Mosaic user forum probably in the next couple days, so you guys have access to this if you want to rewatch it.
All right, so it doesn't look like we have any other questions, so we will wrap the webinar up. So I would just like to thank everybody for joining today. We hope this was helpful and kind of gave you some insight and an introductory into MDF doors and kind of show you the possibilities that you could bring in with your MDF door production. And again, we're going to be doing in more advanced versions of these webinars, so stay tuned. And as Matt said, we will be posting this webinar so you can view it later and reference the information in this webinar at your convenience. Michael says, your renderings look very polished. Is that something extra you're using?
Nope,
so no, this is just
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
No, go ahead, Matt. You're good.
Yeah, this is just a standard, like I mean, this is obviously version 14, so we're showing sheen here. There's obviously some different items brought in. We're doing actually a rendering webinar next, so keep an eye out for that. That'll be more for the actual plugin that we have for Mosaic for doing those cloud renders. But yeah, this is just the standard 3D viewer. Some of these items were used, like the different, like the toilet and the faucet, the sink, are coming from the new appliances and graphics library. You can download that from the import updated data. Those have textures that are mapped to the new textures in version 14.
All right.
Thanks everybody for joining. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Thank you for giving us your time. And yeah, we hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for any future webinars. And we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.